So, just Alyx finished up his 5-part daily series, talking about, what WWE could do in 2021, especially now that things are trying to get back to normal, at least by the summer going into the fall, as far as, the company goes, when it comes to, championships and stuff like that. But, there is one thing, he saved for last, and that was the reconciling with fans. And, it's not just WWE, obviously, that he was kind of alluding to, even though they were the main topic here, but it was a lot of wrestling companies out there that do a lot of these kind of things in wrestling, where they make decisions that kind of alienate the fans, and it takes them a while to, bring them back to the forefront, kind of regain their trust, if you will. And there's a lot of things that Alyx, I'm sure, talked about in his other parts that kind of, connect with this final part when it comes to reconciling with the fans. And he's right about a few things. Like he basically said the number one thing that companies like WWE, AEW, Impact, New Japan, all of them, what they need to do is start being truthful with their fans. Don't hide don't hide, anything from us. Don't try to insult our intelligence. Like you at one time, aka Vince McMahon, said was something that they shouldn't be doing. That fans don't deserve to have happen to them. So I agree with a lot of what Alyx said there. That things like reconciling with the fans, telling them the truth, not hiding things from them, is one major step. And I do agree upon that. He even said that if WWE wants to be more of a television like, environment, television show like environment, then Vince McMahon or Stephanie or somebody has to come out and say, yeah, this is the direction we're going to head. We're still going to have wrestling, but instead we're going to be more like, let's say, a Lucha Underground, if you will, to where we have like a main story, a crime drama like situation, but we have wrestling added to it to kind of help complete the package. And that would make a lot of sense as well if they wanted to go in that direction and they came out and told the fans, yeah, you're right, we are acting more television show wise, thus we're going to go in this direction. But here's the thing though. Reconciling with the fans is one thing. But one major thing they can do to really reconcile with the fans and regain their trust is stop being so repetitive. And it's not just WWE. It's AEW, it's Impact, it's New Japan, you name it. It's any wrestling promotion, big or small, out there. If there's one thing fans hate, it's repetitiveness. I mean, yeah, I get the fact that, with every new generation of fans, every 5 to 10 years, you have to probably, draw back onto something that you did in the past that, long-standing fans had already seen come and go, but now you're bringing back to the forefront for the newer fans to see how they will enjoy it. And, I get that. I can understand that. But nowadays, with so many streaming platforms out there, that allow fans to have access to archival wrestling events, storylines, and things like that, even the newer fans that you want to, introduce this to for the first time will see it, through those archival footage that's available to them. And then they can make, pretty much a judgment there of whether or not they like the idea of, this being brought back in a more modern, updated take, if you will. Or if they feel like, perhaps it's time to move on, and try something fresh, try something new. And that's one thing that wrestling companies overall, WWE, like I said, AEW, New Japan, Impact Wrestling, all of them, MLW, they have to stop trying to do. They have to stop trying to be so repetitive or trying to, I guess you could say update something that doesn't need to be updated or even needs to be, brought to the forefront anymore because, it's great you want to pay homage to said group or to said storyline, but maybe it's time to move off and do something on your own. I mean, a good example when it comes to WWE, and I brought this up during a super chat with JD from NY206 last week during his Raw review, because I'm sure I'm not the only one that notices this. You know, I'm sure JD notices it. I'm sure anybody that watched Raw, heard about what happened on Raw over the past 2 weeks, has heard about it and seen it. It seems the WWE just can't help themselves, you know, when it comes to the storyline, because of the fact that, once again, they're going back to that old drawing board and digging out of all ideas, of all storyline ideas, a GM authority figure power play storyline. That's what they're doing. You know, that's what they're doing. I mean, and the reason, the reason I say this, I should say, what I'm trying to say, the reason I bring this up is because over the past 2 weeks, you have Sonya Deville, who is supposed to be kind of like the SmackDown individual, kind of the person that Adam Pearce, the on-screen authority figure, has put sort of in charge of SmackDown, now suddenly showing up on Raw at the behest and at the assistance of Charlotte Flair, who in story was indefinitely suspended and fined for attacking a referee, and yet here you have Sonya Deville, you know, going against Adam Pearce's, you know, orders, his ruling, and now you're causing dissension, and not just 1 week, you know, of this happening, but as of last night on Raw, 2 weeks of this happening. And why? Because the WWE, the booking brass backstage, the creative staff, they just can't help themselves. They gotta basically bring out that old authority figure power play storyline because they need something to get people hooked. And guess what? It's not hooking people, it's driving them away. Because they had seen this before. They've seen the storyline before, and they don't want to see it again. I mean, they see a mile away, they can see a mile away exactly what WWE is trying to do. Now, unless WWE does change it up, and maybe Adam Pearce at WrestleMania Backlash comes out and terminates Sonya Deville as his assistant because he's sick and tired of her going against his authority, his ruling, then fine. At least you're not, being so predictable by doing that. But if that doesn't happen and you keep making this happen every week, then you're basically just building up to something that everybody sees coming, and that's Sonya Deville either being in the ring and facing somebody of Adam Pearce's choice, or Adam picking a representative, Sonya picking a representative, for a one-on-one match at a pay-per-view where the stipulation is that whoever's, wrestler or superstar wins, that person becomes the overall authority figure on both Raw and SmackDown. Unless we're heading towards that, which a lot of people can see a mile away potentially happening, then, hopefully maybe they do, change things up, and they just have Adam Pearce, have enough of Sonya's going behind his back deal and terminates her as his on-screen assistant and puts her back in the ring. Because honestly, when you go back and you go back and you basically tap into a storyline like this, all you're doing is showing the world, showing the fans that are basically being drawn away from your product, that you want to keep watching your product. You're basically showing them that you have no original ideas left. You have no fresh ideas. I mean, for example, you want to know why fans are so critical? Why they're so quick to sarcastically say, "Oh, that's great. Oh, this is great. I love seeing this. Oh, by the way, how long before you ruin it?" You want to know why fans do that here on YouTube, on social media? You want to know why they do that? Because they've lost your trust. They have lost WWE's trust. That's what's going on. They have lost WWE's trust. And why did they lose WWE's trust? Because WWE has shown, when it comes to Raw, at times on SmackDown, at times on NXT and all that they can't come up with original ideas. Or they can't keep a new, fresh idea from being repetitive, for historical sake. Following the same path, similar ideas have gone in the past, in the past several years. A good example, like I was trying to bring up, RK Bro. this sudden makeshift tag team, of Matt Riddle and Randy Orton. A lot of people like what they see. Randy Orton obviously is behind it. He likes it. But on top of that, you have fans enjoying it, but then you have those same fans coming out and say, oh, by the way, how long before Randy RKO's Riddle? And then we get Riddle versus Orton. And here's the thing. Even if WWE maybe, intends to keep them as a tag team long term, you can't blame fans for, sarcastically, saying stuff like that, because WWE has lost their trust. They have lost their trust because they're so repetitive with what they do. And it's not just WWE. AEW, they've done repetitive stuff to where basically fans have criticized them for not living up to what they're supposed to live up to. So what does AEW do the following week or so to make up for that? Whether it's a live or a taped show, mostly it's live, they give the fans a show that will win them back. But here's the thing. If you're AEW and you're in your infancy stage right now, you can't just be going back and forth, bouncing back and forth, of having a good week and a not so good week. You got to keep that momentum up. And sometimes you can't, and sometimes your decisions, on what you want to have, occupy your show, occupy your promotion, to intrigue the fans. Here's the thing. Sometimes those decisions need to be discussed. They need to be talked about. I mean, here's one of the things a lot of fans, commonly complain about is the fact that AEW has too many factions. They have too many factions. Heck, I counted on my one hand just 10 of the 12 factions, they have. 10 of the 12 factions they have. Excuse me. Got a prank call here. But like I said, just 10 of the 12 factions they have. And if AEW wants to know what's probably getting fans to be drove away from them, if not as much as WWE, it's the fact that they got too many factions. They don't know who to focus on and, when to focus on them. It's always, let's 1 week focus on the Pinnacle. Let's 1 week focus on the Inner Circle. Let's 1 week focus on the Elite. Let's focus on the Dark Order. Let's focus on Hardy Incorporate. Let's focus on the Best Friends. Let's focus on the Nightmare Family. Let's focus on the Factory. It's like they don't know when to make up their mind. They don't know when to make up their mind, and that's what's causing fans to be so confused by what they see. And it's not just fans, it's those that, come on here as fans that review. It gets them confusing as to, okay, what's really going on? And now look, AEW, I'll give them a lot of credit. At least they know, as I mentioned, how to bounce back 1 week after another. They know how to regain that fan's trust. But the decision-making that they make over the past, 2 years, if you will, of existence, the decision-making needs to be improved on. Not just on how many factions you want to have incorporated into your, organization, but mostly who are you going to sign? Who can you trust to be somebody that will be reliant on when you need them to be? You see, these are the kind of decisions that AEW, Tony Khan, they need to think about. I mean, the whole thing with Alyx, everybody basically said that Alyx was trouble, that you're taking a risk bringing her in. And guess what? A lot of people that warned Tony Khan about that were proven to be right. They were proven to be, right, and everything they talked about when it came to her turned out to be true. And it's not just Alyx. Now there's rumor going around that AEW wants to bring in Tessa Blanchard. They want to bring in her and her fiance Daga into the fold. Now, yes, it'd be great if they bring Tessa in and she becomes a female member of the Pinnacle, that you have all your bases covered when it comes to putting all the gold on them eventually down the line. That's great and everything, but you also have to remember there's a lot of women behind the scenes currently in AEW that have a very, how do I put it this way, not so shining history with Tessa Blanchard. They don't like her, they don't care about her, They don't believe her. And basically, they put her in the same camp somewhat as Alyx. Like, she's not to be trusted. So, if I'm AEW and I'm Tony Khan and I'm thinking, hey, bringing Tessa Blanchard in would be a great, addition to our women's division and a great addition maybe to our new Pinnacle group, that's fine. But what you need to do is when you're making that final decision to bring her in, you need to sit her down along with her father and basically say, look, I know about your reputation. I know about the controversy, the baggage, the controversial baggage you bring with you. But so guess what? If you're going to be here, you need to start anew. No more controversy. No more stuff like that. No more thinking you're bigger than the business. You are starting out now as equal as everybody else. No special needs, no special privileges. You're starting out just like everybody else. That's what they need to do. If they're going to make that final decision to bring her in, then they need to basically, long story short, make sure she understands that she is not to bring any controversial, unnecessary baggage with her, and that she's going to be starting out fresh, just like every other woman on that roster. And here's the thing, it's not just AEW either. Impact Wrestling, and I've talked about this, and others have talked about it, the decision to put the belt on Kenny Omega, a non-Impact Wrestling talent, an AEW talent. The decision that they made to do this has gotten mixed reaction. A lot of people lately have been coming out and saying, what good does this do Impact Wrestling? What good does this do them to not have a world champion that's not going to probably be there on a constant basis? What good does this do them? It doesn't do them any good. It doesn't do them any good. It's a stupid decision. But yet you have others that believe the decision was great because it brings notoriety to Impact Wrestling, knowing that Impact, with the exception of Twitch.tv, is not seen in many households on a cable, network perspective when it comes to Access TV. So they know by doing this, it brings them some notoriety. It gets attention on their product. That's what it does. But the point is, though, even Impact Wrestling has made some stupid decisions. And one of them, in the eyes of a lot of folks, is putting the championship on Kenny Omega, who is not an Impact talent, and basically not sure whether or not of how long he's going to be around. So, honestly, the thing is with wrestling overall, not just WWE, but with all wrestling companies, is they need to not only reconcile with the fans, but they need to stop being so repetitive. I mean, the belt collector gimmick, yeah, it's great and everything, that, AEW and Kenny Omega, they want to make this happen in partnership with the, other promotions they're working with. But there's going to be a lot of people that look at it and say, haven't we done this before? Why do companies keep going back to this? And a lot of people that would defend it come out and say, well, it helps make wrestling seem more legit. And that's kind of true in a way, but still it's a storyline that's been done constantly before, and fans are getting sick of it. That's why, there's a lot of fans that are probably counting down the days as to when Kenny drops these belts so that they don't have to deal with this repetitive belt gimmick ever again, or at least for the time being. So, in the end, folks, in the long run, what I'm trying to get at is if wrestling, WWE, mostly WWE, but along the ways as well, AEW, Impact Wrestling, MLW, all of them, if they want to get fans to re-trust them, to, put their trust back in them, I should say, and not criticize them to a point where you have the wrestlers coming out on Twitter and social media and saying, oh, well, you don't know what you're talking about because you don't work behind the scenes here, so, keep your mouth shut. Or having the casual fans, as I've mentioned before, coming out now and saying, oh, all you do, Mr. Just Alyx, or you, Mr. Solomonster, all you guys do is complain because this is what you want. Do you ever listen to how you talk? I mean, Solomonster, you recently said in your recent podcast, that Roman Reigns should hold that belt for a long time. Do you ever hear what you're saying? Do you ever hear how you sound? If people if wrestling companies and casual wrestling fans want the complaints to stop, and people like Saw Monster and Just Alyx from coming out and saying those kind of things, then all wrestling promotions overall, the ones that I've mentioned, need to stop being repetitive. They need to stop being repetitive. They need to, start earning back the trust of the fans, and they need to start going more original and more fresh. And as far as AEW goes, when it comes to the factions, sooner or later they're gonna have to do something about this, or else, as I've talked about before, Turner themselves will come out, Warner Media that is, will come out and say, hey, you have too many factions, we don't know who's who, you need to either cut down on the factions, or you need to release some people because this is too convoluted. That's one thing AEW hopefully will address. And maybe before this, the summer's out, they'll do that. But the point that I'm getting at in closing is this. Wrestling overall, the major promotions that people have eyes on, most of the time, if they want to make sure fans are backing them up 100% when fans start coming back into the arenas, or back into the home, and back into the studios, if you will, whatever the case may be, then they need to reconcile with those fans, and by giving, not reconcile, but they need to earn and re-keep those fans' trust by making the right decisions, when it comes to just, who they hire and stuff like that, as well as make sure they're never repetitive, and most of all, make sure everything that they show the fans is fresh and new. That's what they need to do. Those are the top 3 things these wrestling companies, the ones that I'm looked at the most, have to really focus on as fans start to get ready to trickle back in attendance to these events, these tapings, these live shows, whatever the case may be. But let me know what your thoughts are. Comment down below. Check out Alyx's latest part on his series, because he does bring up some good points here. But let me know what you thoughts on what I had to say, as far as my reply goes and my take on things. Comment below in the comment section and in the live chat during the premiere. And I will talk to y'all later. God bless. Take care. I'm out.